You have probably seen this in every new tech video. That clean, glowing search box with colorful outlines. In this tutorial, I will show you how to build that same look and make it even better. We will focus on all the small details, like subtle ambient light and textured glass inside the box. And the whole setup is fully modular, so you can tweak and switch off every effect, making it completely your own. I am in After Effects, and I will start in this new empty composition right over here, and I can just pick the text tool, type in my text at the center right over here. If it's not centered, don't worry, just select it and then align it horizontally and vertically using the align tool right over here. Now we are going to start to add our first text box, so we're just simply going to pick the rectangle tool and then draw a quick rectangle like that. Make sure that it's aligned, just simply click the align buttons in here to align it, and then we are going to add a fill. So we're going to use a black fill for now, and the stroke for now we're going to set it to none. So now we have this rectangle. Let's toggle the transparency so we can see it properly. Let's actually rename this to text box, and from here we can open rectangle 1, go to rectangle path, and from here we can give it some roundness, something like that, and I'm going to reduce slightly its vertical height like that, and I can position it under the text to see it properly. And now I'm going to toggle back the transparency off, and I'm going to start adding the first glow. So for the first part, I am going to focus on the outer glows that goes outside of the text box. To do that, I'm going to use this effect called drop shadow. Simply drag and drop that right over the text box. So let's select a red color for now, press OK, and then we can increase the distance and even increase the softness. So I'm going to give it a softness of 500, and immediately you can see that nice outer glow right over that. Now I'm going to reposition this to be on top. Like this it looks great, but I am going to make it a little bit more interesting. To do that, we're going to duplicate the drop shadow. Like this, we can blend two different colors together. So let's go to shadow color of the drop shadow 2, and we're going to make that blue. Now, as you can see, we have that purple color in there, and if we offset this slightly, so we can offset this by giving it a distance of 100, for instance, we can now see that the central part is red and the outer part is more blue. I'm going to add another drop shadow, Command D to duplicate this. I'm going to use now white. And for this one, we're going to give it to have the opposite direction. We are going to reduce its opacity to just around 15%. We're going to also decrease a little bit its distance like that. I like how this looks. Now I can rename this to text box outer glow. So our first glow is ready. Now let us create that nice, colorful, rotating stroke. Now, you might think that this is very simple to do, but actually this is a bit complicated. So let's have a look. Right over here, I have an example of a stroke. So I have this stroke, and as you can see, I already have a gradient applied over it. You might think that all you need to do is to rotate this. So if I use something like a trim path to offset this or to rotate this, as you can see, as I scrub through that, nothing happens. The gradient doesn't rotate. Even if I tweak the end in here, as you can see, the gradient doesn't run with it. This is because the gradient stroke is independent of the trim paths tool. So let's see a workaround of how we can do this actual gradient rotation. So let's go back to my composition right here, and I'm simply going to duplicate this, Command D, and we're going to rename this to text box stroke. Now I'm going to simply delete these effects that I have right over here, and I'm going to solo this just so we can see this very properly. And we're going to add our stroke. So first I'm going to click on this, give it a solid stroke like this, and I'm going to first use a white stroke. So now let's open this text box. I'm going to open the contents, open rectangle 1, and there you will find the stroke 1. I am going to duplicate this stroke 1, so select it and Command D on your keyboard, and now I have stroke 1 and stroke 2. I am going to rename this to black stroke, and then I'm going to open it and I'm going to change that to black. Press OK, and nothing changes. That's because we have stroke 1, which is white, and it is on top of it. Now I'm going to open stroke 1. I'm going to go to the taper feature right over here, and I'm going to increase the tapering in here for the start length to 100%. Go to the end length, and I'm going to increase that just very slightly in there. So now we have this like tapering stroke in here. Select this whole text box in here, and I'm going to remove the fill so that we only have this stroke. Let's remove the fill. And now if I see it over the transparency, it looks like this. So I have this tapering white stroke over that black stroke. This doesn't look like a gradient at all, but we're going to change that. So let's click on this, go to Effects and Presets, bring in a fast box blur. Pick this effect, drop it over the text box, and we're going to give it a value of around 5. You can immediately see some blending in here, and you can see like a gradient right over here, and that will be much more visible when our stroke is thinner. But one problem that we have is that at the edges in here, we can see this kind of transparency, and this is not what we want. So we're going to add another effect called CC Composite, drag and drop it right over there. And with this CC Composite effect, we can pick a transfer mode in here of Stencil Alpha, and that would basically cut this effect with the original alpha of this layer. It's still not perfect, so we're going to bring in a levels effect, drag and drop a levels effect, and then we're going to go to alpha, find this triangle right over here, and we're going to squeeze that to the left, and as you can see now, the edges are not transparent. Now, of course, this stroke is quite wide. What I recommend is actually to use a blur radius of half the width of the stroke. So in this case, it is 28. We can make that 14. Like that, you can see the gradient very, very well. So let's have a quick look of how this will work. If we now go to Add right over here, go to Trim Paths. So it's right down below in here, Trim Paths. Open Trim Paths. And as we tweak the end in here, we can see that the gradient runs with that and right over there, and this is exactly what we want. But of course, this is still in grayscale. Let's give that some color. I am going to switch back out of the transparent background, and I'm going to go over the effects and presets, and I'm going to bring in a tritone effect. I'm going to drag and drop right over here. So like this, the highlights, we can give them a specific color. So I'm going to give them cyan color like that. Then the midtones, so we're going to click on that and we're going to give that a red color. And the blacks, the shadows, we can give them a blue color. So now we can see how we have added color over our gradient. Now the final step for this is to actually reduce the stroke size. So let's give that a stroke of around 4. Now the first part is done, we have added our gradient, but hang in there, we are going to add so many more things like glass reflections and so on. Now when I am working on these kind of projects, when I want to achieve a specific look, what is very important is to actually have a lot of inspiration that I can look at and analyze to see how they are built. To do this, a great tool to use is actually Milanote, who are our sponsor for this video. I am in Milanote, and this is the mood board that I have created for this project. And as you can see in here on the left, I have some glowing UI examples, and then on the right, I have some real world examples. I like to balance these so that I can copy different attributes from each. For instance, what I really like in this photo are these glass reflections in here, and somehow I would like to add those to my project. So to remember that, I can use something like an arrow in here, and just point to those reflections so that I really remember what that is all about. Now, once the mood board is set up, I like to find the colors that I would like to use. So I'm going to simply pick the color tool in here and pick some colors from right over here. With this, I can simply double click and then pick whip the colors that I like from here. I like this color. I have the hex code in here, which I can simply copy and paste. And then I can simply hold Alt on my keyboard and duplicate this, double click on that, and we can get the next color. So I really like this nice deep blue in here. And finally, one more color. Maybe we can use that like yellow or even like a cyan. I'm going to double click on this and get this nice cyan from right over here. Now another cool feature that we have in here is that I can actually add video links. So if I double click in here, I can simply add a link in here and I can store that video right over here. So I can check that out later, and I can even create storyboards. So to do that, simply drag and drop this board right over here in the name, double click on that. And once we enter inside of here, we can start and choose a template. So in this case, I'm going to choose storyboard, simply click use this template, and then we can start adding our images right over here. And I can simply just drag and drop those right over here. So I can start, for instance, from this scene and continue to build the storyboard like this. So as you can see, this is super cool to plan your project and visualize better what you will be creating. I am leaving all the links for this in the description below, and you can start using it for free. So let's now animate this stroke. To animate it, it's very simple. We're going to go to text box stroke, trim paths, and from here we're going to animate it from an end of 0, change that to 0, click on the stopwatch, and we're going to animate that to 100%. And we can see that being animated like that. We can see the stroke color being animated with that. But we're also going to add a secondary animation here using the offset. Toggle the stopwatch at the start, go to the end keyframe right over here, and let's rotate that. So now that looks like that. Now what I want to do is pick these end keyframes, go to the graph editor, and we're going to click the Easy Ease In button in here, and then just pull this handle like that. I would like to decrease a little bit this offset animation, so we're going to give it just a value of 118 here at the end. And we can even pick both of these handles at the end in here and make them a little bit slower like that. Great. Now another thing that I would like to do is actually to taper these ends in here so that there would be parts where it's black. So let's close these for now. Let's close stroke 1, and we're going to go over the black stroke now, open that up, and we're going to use the taper for that. So we're going to add like a taper of 10 and a taper of 10 like that. We can also go to the white stroke in here, so that would be stroke 1, open that up, go to taper, and we can increase slightly the end length in here to 10% as well. That way it tapers like that. Let's see how that looks. Now with that animation done, I'm going to close everything in here, and we're going to pick the text box stroke and we're going to duplicate that. We're going to unsolo the first one, and we're going to rename this one, the newly duplicated one, to textured stroke. And this would be the stroke where we would add that kind of glass texture inside of it to add a more dynamic effect. To do that, I'm going to remove all of these effects, simply delete them. Now over this stroke, we're going to add our first effect called glow. So let's just drop in a glow effect in here. We're going to first change the glow based on, we're going to change that to alpha. We're going to reduce the glow threshold to 0. And then we're going to go to glow radius, increase that to around 30. And we can increase a little bit the glow intensity, maybe to 1.5. And we can go to color A now and change that to this blue in here. And now like that, we have a tiny blue glow. You can't really see much right here, but if we toggle the transparency, you can see that blue glow right over there. And what I suggest is actually to change this transfer mode in here to screen. And the same for the stroke and for the glow right over here. Now I am going to go back over the texture stroke. We're going to duplicate this glow. So Command D. And this time we're going to increase the glow radius to around 150%, and the glow intensity, we're going to lower it to around 0.3, change color A to that secondary color that we had before. So that would be this red color. Perfect. So now that we have this subtle glow right over here. Now I want to add another effect in here. So we're going to add a CC vector blur, drag and drop it right over there. And this is where the magic will happen. So we are going to change type from natural to direction, fading. Then we are going to increase an amount to around 80, and we can even change this angle, decrease or increase the revolutions. So something like 0.8 would work perfectly. And that's basically it. Now I'm going to add another effect called curves. And with this effect, what I want to do is to enhance a little bit this look. So basically to make it pop up a little bit more. So let's go to curves, increase the RGB, and we can also go to alpha and increase that as well, like this. And like that, we can really see that glass textured glow happening in here. And we can even tweak the angle offset in here if we would like to give it a different direction. This looks great, but of course, we can see this kind of weird stuff happening at the edges in here. So let's fix that. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the fill right over here, and I'm going to change that from none to black, like that. And now we can see more depth in those colors. And then secondly, I'm going to go to an effect in here called CC Composite. I'm going to simply drag and drop it right over there, go to transfer mode and switch that to stencil alpha. And like that now, that glass object is contained within that text box. And that looks really good. Maybe it's a little bit too bright, so I'm going to go over the glow right over here, and I'm going to reduce the glow intensity of the first one to around 0.8, like that. Now, before we continue, I'm very quickly going to show you how to fix this small thing in here. We can see if we scroll over this right over here, we can see that this is having this weird animation in there, and that's because of the trim paths effect that we had done earlier. So we're going to open this up, we're going to go to contents, go to trim paths, and we are going to toggle off the end of this. So just toggle off this stopwatch, make sure that you are behind the last keyframe in here and remove that stopwatch. And now we have removed that strange animation. Now I'm going to add one final effect called CC Light Sweep. So simply drag and drop that right over here, change the shape from sharp to smooth, and we're going to increase the width to around 200. And I'm simply going to go right over here, go to the stopwatch for the center in here, and we're going to bring that center, so move that center to this place right over here, right out of the screen on the left. Then we're going to move forward to around the 3-second mark. Let's zoom out and bring that all the way to the other side. Hit U on your keyboard so that you can see that keyframe. Press F9 on your keyboard while you have that keyframe selected, and then go to the graph editor and pull that end part out like that. So we can see the animation right over there. Perfect. Now we are going to combine this glass effect with a glowing outline stroke. But before we do that, I would like to humbly ask you to simply like, comment, and even subscribe if you haven't. I know that many of you comment. This really helps me to reach more people and be able to do more videos like this one. So let's continue. Now I am going to go out of the graph editor and unsolo everything in here to see how everything looks together. This already looks quite good, but let's add a little bit more glow to this whole effect. So we're going to pick the text box stroke right over here. We're going to duplicate that. We're going to position it on top right over there, and we're going to rename that to text box stroke glow. If we solo this, this is basically just this stroke. To this, I would like to add some glow. So let's go to effects and presets, add glow from here, drag and drop it right over there. I'm going to give this a glow radius of around 50. I'm going to duplicate this now one time, and I'm going to give this a glow radius of around 150. Now I'm going to get a fast blur effect and simply drag and drop a fast box blur right over here and increase that very slightly, so something like a 6 would work perfectly. Now after this, I'm going to add another glow effect. Just pick this glow effect, duplicate it, Command D on your keyboard, and then place it right under the fast box blur effect. And then we're going to increase the glow radius to around 300, like that, and the glow intensity to around 10, just so it's more vibrant like this. And to make it look even more interesting, what I am going to do is I'm simply going to pick this layer right over here, go to Track Matte, and I'm going to pick whip that to the textured stroke. So I'm going to link that to the texture stroke. And now you can see that stroke happening only within that glass effect. And with that done, make sure that you toggle back on the texture stroke in here, since that goes off by default. And now we can remove the soloing of this layer, and we can see that all together right over there. Now let us see how this animates. So let's preview that. That looks fantastic. Now what I want to do is actually to animate this glass effect in. So I'm going to go over the textured stroke, press T on my keyboard to bring up opacity, and then we're going to toggle that. We're going to start that from 0, and we're going to toggle that in at around the 1 second mark in here. And we're going to give that like a 50%. And now we can pick both of these keyframes and press F9 on our keyboard. Great, so like that, the main look of this effect is done. Now, of course, as you may see in here, this has many different effects working together to create this complex animation right over here. For this reason, I have created a template for you, which you can get if you'd like to create this a little bit faster and even have more control along the way. So I am inside of the template in here, and let's have a look at some of the cool features that this have to really make your life easier. Go to Effect Controls, just go to Text Box Properties and go to Effect Controls from here. And the first thing that you have in here is to select text layer. Basically what this does, if I have a different text layer in here, so let's type in something new in here. Let's say I would like the glow to be with this text instead. I can simply go over the text box properties in here, and now I'm going to select this layer instead. And right away, this just jumps to text. So this is super handy if you would like to switch this effect to a different layer. Another cool thing that this has is actually that this adapts to your text. If I type something new in here, it immediately repositions to our text, and everything stays fully animated, as you can see. Another cool feature is the size and position feature. So if we open this up, we have all the options to reposition and resize our text box. So for instance, we can add some horizontal padding like that to increase it or decrease it. We can even increase the vertical padding like that, and we can even adjust our position. So if I want to make it left aligned, I can do so like this very quickly, and I can even adjust it horizontally like this if I would like. Next is roundness, very self-explanatory. If we decrease that, it will have very little roundness, and if we increase it, it will be round. Then we have the text box color and text box opacity. If we increase the opacity to 100%, the background of this text box would show up more, and we can give this a different color, as you can see, and that's how it would look basically. So I'm going to undo this for now. Then we also have the text box background blur. This is quite cool. If I have like a shape layer, so let's create a quick shape layer in here, place that right over there for instance, and I'm going to place it right under all of the layers in here. As you can see right now there is no background blur, but if I go to text box properties, increase the text box blur, you can see now that being blurred behind my text box. And you can even like enhance this slightly by increasing the text box opacity like that. The next thing would be the stroke thickness. Once again, quite self-explanatory. I can simply adjust the thickness like that. Next is the stroke colors. You can just adjust the colors from here to have any color like that. And finally, a great thing is that you can even separate these different layers, these different effects, and give them a different percentage in here. For instance, if I don't want outer glow, I can simply turn that to 0. If I don't want the inner glow right over there, I can simply turn that to 0. And like that now, I just have this stroke and that glass effect. I can even remove the textured glow altogether, and now I only have that outer stroke. And like that, you can really create your own outline, your own design to fit your project perfectly. So of course, feel free to follow this tutorial to see how you can build all of this yourself. But if you'd like to make this a little bit quicker and even have more control over it, you can get this template. I'm going to leave all the links in the description below. Great, so now before we close, I actually wanted to reference this text animation, which we have right over here. So I'm going to go back to the glowing outline that we have done before, and I have this text layer right over here. To animate this, it's actually very simple. I'm going to go and open it right over here, go to animate, and we are going to bring in something like an opacity. From here, we can turn that opacity to 0%. Now we can go to range selector, and we can simply toggle the stopwatch on the offset right over here, go forward as the text box reveals right here, and give that 100%. And now if we click F9 on this, while we hold this keyframe, then we go to the graph editor and pull this, now we can see that being written right over there. And we can also like pull this last keyframe a little bit more backwards to reveal a little bit slower. That looks perfect. One final thing that we can add is actually that nice blur and even that color change. Now to do that, I actually used one of my presets. It is the text highlights presets in here. I can simply double click on that and it will bring in that effect right over here. Now I also have a video which explains how to do this without a preset. So in that case, just check the description below. In this case, I'm going to use this preset since it makes it much faster. So I'm going to go to text highlight 1 right over here inside of the preset. With that, we can simply move this highlight position wherever we like that. So like this, I have like this color that is moving over it, and we can start it from right over here. So I'm going to go right over here. We're going to toggle this from right here and even move it a little bit further, -56. And then we can go right over where all the text have been typed and bring it to 100%. Then go to highlight intensity. I'm going to toggle the stopwatch for that as well. I'm going to hit U on my keyboard, and I'm going to pull this keyframe slightly earlier in here, and then go right over here, bring that back to 0% like that. And now I have this nice animation. And finally, I'm going to pick both of these keyframes, pick F9, go to the graph editor in here and pull that in like that. And now that looks like that. Now to do that blur, I can simply go inside of the animated properties of this preset, and from here I can select all the properties that I would like to animate. So in this case, you can see that I have animated the fill color, so I can give that if I would like a different color, like for instance this nice cyan, and I can also give it a blur. So to give it a blur, simply increase this like that, and there we go, we have that nice blur. And like this, now the text looks like it is getting out of like this glass text box. Of course, once again, feel free to get this preset from my description, but if you'd like to do it yourself, I also have a video that explains how to do just that. Just click the link in the description below.